no.
Not ready. We are so ready to talk Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus with Chris Perkins.
Hi.
And Adam Lee.
Hello.
You guys have been working on this project for 1.5 years?
1.5 thousand years.
1,000 years. Yeah. When did the conception for this adventure begin?
A long time ago.
In a galaxy far, far away.
Oh, I guess it began a while ago. We were sitting in a room wondering what we were going to do next. And
Been what, 2017?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then and we just we started to think that having an adventure in the Nine Hells would be interesting. We toyed around with a couple ideas, and
I don't actually think I was in that room. I think I came in later at some point.
well, I remember just you and I and Richard chatting about like sort of flavor wise what would be a cool place to go. But yeah. It's a long hazy time, but in the mists of memory, yeah. I just remember that there was this point where we're like, okay, we haven't done a significant place in the Nine Hells. We just come off of Waterdeep, and we were like, okay, what's a mood change and a tempo change and all that. And so yeah, and then we just kind of settled on that and it got greenlit, and away we went.
That's something that's really exciting about our 5th edition releases, is that these adventures have been very different feeling over the last 5 years, right?
Yeah,
You know?
and will continue to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so going from, the jungles of Chult, from the mists of Strahd, to a very city-based thing, to now this having these extraplanar beings be a bit of a focus in Avernus, but then also having Baldur's Gate be a location that we haven't explored yet in 5th edition.
At what point did Baldur's Gate come into the equation?
It came in, I'd worked on it with the team for a while, and we had a whole thing, our story already figured out, and then Baldur's Gate kind of came in at that point. And it was like, oh, we've got some things in the works, and we want to have Baldur's Gate featured. And it was like, okay, we can do that. And it was one of those deals where, I thought, okay, I can sort of fit it in there. And then the more I started to pull on the thread of the story to try to weave Baldur's Gate into it, the more the whole thing unraveled. And so it was one of those where it was just like, scrap it and let's rethink it. So, and then we had to rethink it with like, how are we going to put Baldur's Gate in there? And that kind of broke the flow of the story, because the story originally was just going to be like, you're trucking along and doing things, and then bam, you're right now in the Nine Hells, and you got to figure it out in the whole thing. And then it was like, well, no, now we've got to feature some Baldur's Gate into that. Then it's like, now that's got to breathe, and then you go into the Nine Hells, and then you've got to have this adventure in Avernus. And so then it was like a lot of figuring out pacing and figuring out like, well, how does it all connect? And so
Right. What can we do in Baldur's Gate to reinforce some of the themes that you'll get later on?
Yeah. I love how fluid adventure writing can be, right? Because things come up in writing or through external pressures that allow you to come up with ways, and it's very similar to how a dungeon master reacts to their players or other things going on.
Very much so. Yeah.
I can see it being a challenge, trying to be like, oh, how do we get this in there? But the brain trust of everybody here working on D&D was able to kind of figure out, and I can't wait for people to get this book and see it and see how it flows. I bet it will be seamless.
And a lot of our adventure stories are sort of, there's a think tank that happens. It's not just one person in a room trying to hash it out by themselves. There's Adam, as leading this story, could draw upon whatever resources he wanted to in terms of creative spirit, creative energy. He could just put people in a room. And
yeah, that was the great thing. Is just like, if I have a particular question or a particular thing, and I can pick anybody in the building, and they are on the team, D&D team, and they've there's experts in different areas, and then also get to go reach outside the walls and pick from any number of really talented and passionate people that just would love to kind of put their stamp on it, and that's kind of what we did.
So if you were to describe to someone what are the major themes of this adventure, what would they be?
Well, I think I would say that probably the one that really sticks out for me is that temptation, that you are and corruption, that you've got to hold out against the forces of evil, and that you've got to find your heroic spirit somewhere, and you're going to be tempted at every step.
Tempted for power, for monetary type things.
Tempted for your soul, really. I mean, like what you value as a human being, and what you, I mean, you'll your greed will be tempted, your desire for power will be tempted, your ability to cut corners will be tempted. So
Yeah.
And that works for both players and characters.
Oh yes,
Indeed. I think the other one besides temptation is redemption.
Ah, yeah.
The idea that even the most evil creatures have the potential to be redeemed under the right circumstances. And that sort of is aimed squarely at Zariel, the archdevil, who we've talked about numerous times now. She is the leader of one of the layers of the nine hells, but she used to be an angel. And so is there a way to solve this story, to come out of it alive,
Yeah.
with her emerging with you as a redeemed figure?
Yeah.
And if you've done bad things, is the redemption for you as well?
I love that as a theme because it feels very human, especially right now, right? That there are evil things that are happening, and that we all as humans, do mistakenly or
Yes.
not. And is there anything that can be done as a mea culpa or as a way to go past that?
Yeah, as creatives, we would be lying if we said that our work is not influenced by what happens in the world around us. It's just something that we accept, and there are parts of the world and stuff which is kind of a hellscape, and so
yeah.
so we're kind of in the moment,
Yeah.
and dealing with things that maybe are being dealt with.
Yeah. Yeah, and
In our psyches,
Yeah.
And I think it's a way for us to maintain our sanity as creatives. I think, part of being a writer and part of being a creative person is feeling a little too severely what's going on. And there's got to be an outlet for that. And I think through art, artists and writers and, musicians, they're all kind of doing the same thing, is like, how do I get this feeling out? And how do I feel like I'm helping out the planet or helping out humankind in my own little way,
Right.
So yeah,
and I think Dungeons and Dragons, has in recent times felt like this salve for a lot of people, right? That that the hellscape that's going on around us, we can have some measure of control over what our player characters do in the stories and how they resolve themselves, and
Yes.
feel that we have accomplished
Yeah.
something, even if it is in a fantasy world that's in your
Exactly.
imagination. Amongst your friends, it still can have those same emotional ties to what's happening.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good that can come out of stealing an infernal war machine and just running over a bunch of evil creatures with it. But it also lets us showcase brightness. It's not all doom and gloom here. That's how Lulu came about. I don't know if we've ever talked about her.
Yeah. So let's talk about Lulu. I know we've talked about that character internally a lot, but was that your creation, Adam?
That actually was, yeah. I mean, it was I suggested a Holophant, but then other people all kind of pitch in. So but yeah, Lulu was this Holophant that was a companion of Zariel's, and she then becomes this innocent sort of guide through Avernus. She's lost her memory, and you're trying to piece the parts together through her memories, which have failed her. And but yeah, she is this bright. It's like there are these. One of the things we were cognizant about was how do we put moments of brightness and moments of levity and moments of fun in a dark world like Avernus, and Lulu is definitely one of those characters to do that.
Can you describe what a Holophant is, so our listeners can hear?
I think you're probably best qualified to describe a Holophant.
So Holophant has a storied history in D&D and has been around since the first edition Monster Manual 2. Essentially, it is a tiny golden winged elephant of kind spirit who values friendship and truth and valor.
And that was a companion of Zerial when she was a celestial.
Correct.
And then
Hollyphants can also blow sprinkles out of their nose. Sparkly. They got a sparkly cone blast of positive energy.
I think that's a very important detail that I think players will latch onto a lot. I could see many player characters just being like, "Oh, and by the way, shower of sparkles."
They're not to be trifled with, though. They're dangerous little creatures if you get their hackles up, because not only can they use their trumpet to blow sparkles of positive energy, which, by the way, evil creatures don't like.
Will damage them even.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. But they can also use their horn their trumpet blast as a horn of blasting.
Oh,
Like
So do
knocking
some
down
thunder
walls
damage.
and stuff. Yeah, exactly. So
wow.
and they got some funky spellcasting abilities too.
What's the CR of a Hollyphant?
Oh, I think
Not
it's-
like to put you on the spot, but
I think it's like, well, I can just look it up.
Oh, right, we have the book.
Shit.
Dun, dun,
Look at
dun.
The book. What does the book say?
Nice.
It is challenge rating 5.
5. You were
For a
right.
small celestial. And part of that stems from the fact that they've got some juicy innate spellcasting ability. But the trumpet of blasting and the trumpet of sparkles are my favorite part.
Sweet. And then you can use that character as an NPC to potentially, help the players along and or get some information about what's happening.
Yeah, and the DM can, if the DM wants to, they can be Lulu through the adventure and kind of embody that character and throw
that's a
in
good
like
idea.
fun stuff for it. But also we've given them the option to, if the DM's like, I've got too many things to think about, they can give Lulu as an NPC to run for a player who wants to run Lulu.
Yeah. One of the good things about Lulu is if the characters are tempted and she's there, she'll be like, don't do that.
Yeah.
She can be your conscience.
Yeah, she could be your moral compass.
She's a Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good way to think of it too. Yeah, I like that. She also has a specific knowledge of what happens when you do become corrupted.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So she's like, "Don't do that because I know what'll happen."
Yeah.
Horn of blasting.
Yeah. But she has this positive spirit of optimism. She thinks Zariel can be redeemed.
Yeah.
At least she hopes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's probably where the player characters will get that inclination.
They
from,
might get
right?
that seed. Like it's not intuitive that an archdevil can be redeemed.
Yeah.
But if
Right.
Lulu says she can be, then maybe
Then maybe.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Lulu hasn't steered us wrong so far.
Right.
And then there's that awful DM who will be like, "Oh, by the way, that wasn't Lulu. That was the Asmodeus all along."
That was Glor Glamok.
Yeah.
Very cool. So more about Avernus itself and how players once they get transported into there, what can they experience? Like, what does it smell? What does it feel like? What does it look like when you're there?
Well, it's awful. It's awful. There is a section in the book that talks about just that hell is not fun. The 9 hells are terrible. It's and it's not meant to be any kind of goodness in there, and that the food tastes terrible and the water tastes
Even food that you bring with you and water
Yeah.
to taste with you doesn't taste right in
Oh.
hell.
Ooh, that's
Yeah.
almost more terrifying than anything else you guys have ever described to me.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty. We describe it in some visceral detail. So it's nasty.
Yeah. Well, I think I remember once when we were just kind of working through this, and there was this section where there was like, oh, this devil is like lounging on satin sheets, and I remember Chris wrote back, he's like, there shouldn't ever be satin sheets in hell. Like there's just,
I'm like everybody in hell, including the devils who live there, are never get what they want. They never get the promotion that they want. They never get the accolades that they feel they're entitled to. Everything is just slightly uncomfortable. Like you can't even find a comfortable chair in hell.
Yeah.
It's like there's that part of the chair that sticks up in your ass,
Right.
and sort of pokes you.
Every single time.
Every single chair in hell has something like that. So nobody's happy because nobody feels like they're getting what they want. Even when they get what they want, there's something about the nature of hell that makes them unsatisfied with what they got.
Oh, interesting. So so you could be craving defeating your enemy, and then all of a sudden you defeat your enemy, and
Right.
you're like, oh, but
because hell is hell. It's you want to feel like you're in your own personal hell when you're there.
yeah.
yeah, it's not a place where you're like, oh, we could stay here. This is cool. Like, it's not. It's a place where the more you're there, the more you are like, I cannot stand another day here. I've got to get out. I've got to get out of here. and it because of its nature, and there was like a lot of metaphysical conversations we had about it, just like what is the nature of this thing, like the people, the souls that are drawn here were evil in on the material plane, and they're drawn here, and they are actually continuing this evil trajectory of their existence, and by their own nature, it's warped. I think it's kind of a co-creative way. It's like hell, the nine hells warps the people, but they're also the evil energy that they have are warping the environment around them. So it's sort of this vicious circle. Ugh. So and to interrupt that, for a being to interrupt that, takes an incredible force of will. So one of the other themes of this book is like that the righteous path is the most difficult path. That to actually walk through and resist it all, and to resist just the weight of it, takes an incredible force of will to do it, and all these things are just designed to irritate you and to make it uncomfortable and to not reward you. So yeah.
So even though it sounds like the most awfulest place ever described in a D&D book, probably even worse than the Underdark, there is a lot of information in there for running an adventure. Obviously that falls in the storyline of Descent to Avernus, but you can run this adventure a location of your own devising, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There's a gazetteer in there about what it feels like, and DMs could use that information to tell any story that they want to tell.
Absolutely, and there are little tricks and things the book has as well to help you mechanically get across that idea.
What are some of those?
Well, let's look one up. Since we have the book.
I always like looking for specific examples.
Of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I just love that idea that people can use this. I mean, this is something we were talking about earlier, that like there's parts of this book that can be used to tell the specific story that we're telling, but that you can use it to tell whatever story you want.
Yeah. I mean, you can take this whole book and pull out pieces and parts that you like and make up your own adventure, and go for it.
So one of the in the section on Everyone's Unhappy, one of the
is that the subhead?
Yeah.
Everyone's unhappy. Sounds like an REM song gone wrong.
Everyone's unhappy.
Yeah. Sorry, there's a page in here called Life in the Nine Hells, and it captures a lot just in this one page. But one of the specific ideas that a DM can use to reinforce this is if a character rolls a natural 1 on an attack roll made with a non-magical weapon, you can decide that the weapon breaks.
Nice. I like getting some critical fumble stuff back in there.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that.
Yeah,
sort of sprinkled through. Just little ideas, throw ideas. It's not something you have to do all the time. You can just decide to do it once.
Right.
But it gets the idea across right away.
Right, that things in here are designed to be, even if you defeat
Exactly.
kill the enemy with a sword, that sword has the potential
Yes.
to blow up in your face.
And then there's a section called Everything's Awful. And one of the
REM.
interesting ideas there is, or things you can do is, if a character commits a selfish act, you can reward that selfishness by granting that character inspiration. But unlike regular inspiration, the benefit can't be transferred.
Oh, so
it's like hell rewarding you for being
selfish,
and tempting you to be selfish again.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. The inspiration mechanic, I think, is one that I wish more people used, because it's a great reward.
Yeah.
And not as many people use that transferring thing.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's a way to get that across, but also take it away.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this kind of harkens back to when we were working on Waterdeep, and Chris had mentioned Waterdeep is the city itself is a character, and so we were talking about that, and it's like then from that came this little list of things of like, if you're a good person to Waterdeep, Waterdeep's actually good to you, and so if you do a lot of good things, then you're running down the street and you're being chased. An old shopkeeper will open the door and say, "Come in quick," and help you out, and you can duck in and can hide,
or push a cart out in front of the people pursuing you so that they trip over so that you can get away. Things like that. Yeah.
And so from that came this thing of like, what is the nine hell? What are the nine hells doing to you as you enter there? Except it's all bad. Like
nothing good.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter if you do
can be
anything
good to this place, and it'll just still be bad to you. Yeah.
And then one of the fun details that I think we've latched onto for D&D Live, as well as in the creation of an actual physical item, is the soul coin. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys came up with that? I think, wasn't it Jim Zub who came up with that?
So I mean, I remember talking in the meetings that we had, and like, what is the currency of hell, and what is the economy? How do things get bought and sold here? And we kind of knew that with the souls were traded back and forth, but then Jim had this idea that what if the souls are actually encased in an iron coin, and then that was that moment where we're like, oh, that's great, and now what can we do with these things?
And what can players do with those things?
What can they do, Chris?
Well, so one of the things that they can do is they can use them to fuel infernal war machines. These rambling, horrific vehicles that you can trundle across Avernus in. And they're powered by souls, and soul coins are basically portable souls. So you can just pop them in like a slot machine into these machines and power them for a certain amount of time. And then your furnace is full of a tortured soul that's screaming merrily away, and you're just burning it essentially. And it's probably an evil soul, so whatever. And you let it scream, and you just tear across the landscape.
Oh God, that's one of those things where you're like, well, it has a purpose, but it'll also feel really bad when you do it.
Or there's this traveling emporium, the Wandering Emporium, that wanders Avernus, and it's run by a charming fellow named Mahadi. He takes soul coins in exchange for all the things that he can offer. He runs a restaurant/spa called Infernal Rapture.
Even though it tastes horrible,
It doesn't there, because he has struck a deal with an archdevil to get around that. So if you want a good meal,
this is the only place you can
this
get
is the place you go and get it. But it's going to cost you a soul coin.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So
wow.
You're tired of eating bile? Okay. Here you go. Here's a place where you can have a beautiful steak and some mashed potatoes and some, collard greens or whatever, and it'll taste just like you remember it back on the material plane, if not better. And
is it actual? Here's a question: is it actual food?
Yes, he goes far and wide to collect the finest ingredients and the finest food.
Oh, okay. So
you can thank Chris Lindsay for the Wandering Emporium and Mahadi and his hospitality.
I love that whole idea of the Wandering Emporium. You obviously were able to bring it to life during D&D Live, so people got to have a little bit of taste of that. But I think the version of it in the story is even more fantastical and amazing.
Yeah. But hell is all about making deals, and Mahadi's made some good ones to sort of get around some of the problems that many people deal with in hell.
Right. How do you find the Wandering Emporium when you're in hell?
The Wandering Emporium actually can find you. So,
really?
Yeah, it can show up anywhere at any time, and it's a DM tool that the DM can use. Like if the players are, they're adventuring off and they're wandering and they need something to, kind of interact with, the Wandering Emporium can show up. Or if the adventurers are lost and they're, or they need food, or they need their weapons are broken and they need repairs. So you can get all these different things at the Wandering Emporium. You can get your weapons fixed, you can get demon ichor, you can get all kinds of materials. And so it's a tool for the DM to be like, okay, here we can now level them up or help them out or give them a boost or actually give them a nice warm meal and a nice place to stay. It can also be a place where as the adventurers have gone on their quests, they rack up enough soul coins that they need to spend them. The Wandering Emporium is a place where you can actually then kind of unload some of your soul coins and get some stuff.
Or at least tempt the players to want to unload them.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And you can get a haircut at the Wandering Emporium.
Oh.
Yes. All kinds
Something
of stuff.
else about so soul coins are magic items, and in addition to using them as currency, they actually have some benefits in and of themselves.
Oh, just by possessing them?
Yeah.
Do you have to attune to them in order to get those?
You don't.
Oh, okay. Well, that's even another
So
added bonus.
There's a certain weight to carrying them. I won't go into too much detail there, but you may not be able to carry too many of them because of just the burden.
And is it true that
upon
some are heavier than others?
They're all heavy, equally heavy.
Okay.
But you are somewhat limited. Evil creatures aren't burdened by carrying them.
Oh.
But good creatures feel the weight. But you can use a soul coin, which has 3 charges, to drain some of the soul's essence out of there.
To heal you? Or
to
just
gain temporary hit points.
Temporary hit points.
Doesn't heal. but you gain a boost.
That's might be handy.
You can also telepathically reach out to the soul in the coin and sort of phrase a query and get an answer from it.
Oh, like a
based
Speak
on
with
its
Dad
own knowledge.
type of deal.
Exactly. And there's some limits there as well, but it's kind of a chilling idea that you can actually communicate with this tortured thing that's stamped and trapped in this form.
And then if they don't answer your questions, then you can feel totally justified putting it in and having their soul burn.
Like, ploop, gone.
All right, next one. But that, do the souls within those coins, do they have any other way to, do they see around them?
Not
or
really.
It's just that one connection you can have if you're holding it. You
They're
can
just
have a
trapped in
conversation.
a dark prison, basically.
I see.
And that's kind of one of the things we wanted to do is like have it that, at first this thing seems really weird and strange. And then as you get, into this adventure, you're kind of throwing around soul coins like they're nothing.
You just sort of forget.
And you just sort of forget. And then, but somebody hopefully in the party is like, what are we doing?
We've got the souls of people that we're burning.
Yeah.
Are we as bad as the devils around
Yes,
us?
yes. you are.
And then can you? And then can you? If there is a pang of conscience, and then it's like, okay, we got to throw these things out, and can we get through this adventure without using soul coins?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big question, and then things get really hard, So.
Is there a relative value for them? I think I remember you guys mentioning this at some point, where the soul coin from a paladin or someone who was righteous at one point in their lives and then became corrupted might be more valuable to specific people in hell?
Exactly. Certain fiends do place a higher stock in owning a soul coin that has, say, a paladin trapped inside it than some lowly criminal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because those are a dime a dozen. Tons
Right.
of criminals
Yeah.
can be crafted, but a denizen of Lathander might be more valuable than anything else.
Yeah, and if you also, should you survive this adventure and get out to the material plane, and you take one of these with you, it's like maybe or there are interdimensional travelers that are in Avernus. They might actually be like, hey, we'd like to take one of those, and you might actually be able to trade it for gold or something, magical item or something like that. So.
So because it is an item, you can take it back to the material plane.
Yep.
What powers does it have there?
Same.
Same.
Yeah.
Same weight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you might find a diabolical scholar, who's like, I've heard of these. I've never been able to get one.
Right. And you're evil, so great. I'll hand it to you.
I'll give you 3 scrolls for your soul coin.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh man, will you be redeemed after making that choice? So I don't know.
Probably not.
Probably not. No.
No.
You're full evil now. So we've talked a lot about what the part of the adventure that's in Avernus. Let's go a little bit into the material side of things a little bit more, since that's where we're going anyway.
Yep.
So Baldur's Gate is not much more of a non-hellscape than hell is, right? For some.
Voted worst city in Faerun. 100 years running. It's a dreadful place. We deal with it in fairly good detail here. Like similar to Waterdeep Dragon Heist, where we had a section of the book that was essentially a gazetteer. Outside of the adventure, it sort of exists on its own as a catalog of important things you need to know about the city.
Yeah.
We emulated that here, but with Baldur's Gate. And in Waterdeep and Baldur's Gate, you really have opposite sides of a coin. They could not be more unlike, other than their size. Their personality is completely different. Baldur's Gate is a terrible place. It's violent. It's vicious. There is order in the form of a government, and we've talked about this before. But there's the upper class people who are protected behind their high walls on the hill, and then there's everybody else who's just like rats, scavenging for whatever's left,
Right.
and eking out a merciless living, while criminals and others prey on them, and pirates and all their sordid lot, and then cultists of the Dead Three, who indiscriminately murder people and let blood course through the streets like rain.
It's a place where might makes right.
Yes, if you have bodyguards, great. You can probably get through town without being mugged or otherwise molested. If you're on your own, watch your back. Trust that the fog is your only ally. But
Just for
beware the
concealment?
fog. Yeah, exactly. But beware the fog, because there's stuff lurking in there around every alleyway waiting to jump you and take your money purse and maybe your life.
Ouch.
So
how does the adventure open? Like, how do we get to Baldur's Gate?
Very good question. It starts with a calamity that's affected another city nearby and caused a surge of refugees to show up on Baldur's Gate's perimeter.
The best place to go to if you're a refugee.
If it's all you got, you'll take it, right? But they're not allowed in. The Flaming Fist, which is a mercenary company that polices Baldur's Gate, has basically shut the city to hold these refugees out. But it's created a bit of a stir, and some of the refugees have managed to sneak in. But it's taxed the Flaming Fist during a crisis where cultists of the Dead Three are murdering people. They've these cultists who had been kind of beaten down and thought to have been eliminated have arisen again. Something about the Dead Three is arising again. And so the Flaming Fist comes to the adventurers and says, hey, look, we're busy with refugees. We need you to find out where these cultists are coming from and take them out. And you are given, as characters, and this is unusual, this certainly wouldn't happen in Waterdeep, but you're given free reign to take out the cultists by any means necessary.
Dead or alive, or
Dead
just
or
dead,
alive.
dead.
And the Flaming Fist says, we don't care who you have to cut your way through. We don't care what you have to do, how many buildings you have to burn down. Do what it takes, take them out.
Wow.
And so the characters have carte blanche.
And that is very interesting to me because it sets up perfectly that your characters may be deserving of being in Avernus.
Yeah.
Because of
Right.
the ends justifying the means and how, like,
Yes.
yeah.
And one of the things that was developed for Baldur's Gate is this idea that your party, in addition to having your backgrounds and all the things that normal characters do when they start off their adventure careers, you can, with this book, come up with a dark secret that unites your party.
Okay.
And that dark secret is tied to something in Baldur's Gate. Something you did as a group or something that something that you've become involved with that can sort of link your party together, but also create that sense that if someone were to find out what your party's dark secret is, that could be very bad for you.
I see.
But it sort of captures the flavor and feeling of the people who live there.
Yeah.
There's a reason your party is in Baldur's Gate. This dark secret might be that reason.
I see. What and is it a table or something that you can roll on?
There are choices that you can make, and then choices within choices based on the general idea. And what I mean by that is,
like it's the type of thing that
and we
you
can be
would-
specific here, right? So,
Sure.
You can decide that your dark secret is built around a conspiracy of some kind. In which case, if you decide conspiracy is the thing that is your secret, there are different conspiracies that you can sort of choose from or roll from or decide on. If murder is the thing that unites your party, that's a separate section and talks about what is
the choices that you have
what
to
are the
make
choices,
on
what is the murder that unites you.
Yeah.
Theft is another possibility. Your party is united by a theft. Your party can also be united by a failed coup.
Oh, in Baldur's Gate?
In Baldur's Gate.
That somehow you were involved
you were
in
involved with. So you pick one of those four Uber ideas, and then within each of those, it gets specific,
can
and you can
develop
start
some
to nail
specificity.
down the specificity. How are you all involved? How are each of you? What are each of your roles in that dark secret? Were you an instigator in the murder, or were you a quiet voyeur?
Yeah. Right. And both of those have weight to them, but
Yes,
different weights.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you kind of build that together as an exercise during the party creation process at the start of the campaign.
Right.
Before you get into the whole, let's hunt down cultists and burn half the city down in the process.
Yeah. Well, I love that too, because that sets up the theme that you were talking about in redemption. Like,
Yes.
if you have this dark secret, and you go through all of the machinations and tribulations that will ensue in this adventure, could you ultimately be making enough choices
Right.
that
Yes.
are for the greater good, or are you just evil?
And as a group of players, you can think, well, right off the bat, do we lean into this and do
Yeah.
we say, yeah, we're a bunch of jerks and let's go all the way,
Yeah.
and then when you go into Avernus, you're like, ha ha ha,
Yeah.
or do you right off the bat say, oh my gosh, we've done something terrible, and how do we get out of this?
Yeah.
And there's a neat little part where that somebody knows, an NPC in the adventure knows of your dark little secret, and you run into them, and then what does that mean?
Then what do you do?
What do you
Right.
do?
It's the classic D&D question.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And so Baldur's Gate, structurally, the characters that you meet in the course of completing your quest there, they are in some ways reflections of what you're going to meet later on in hell.
Yeah.
The villains are basically devils in human form in a way. They're humans with the characteristics of devils. They're greedy, they're manipulative, they're tyrannical, and so you get a taste of hell before you enter hell.
Yeah. Right. Well, and I think that's why including a city like Baldur's Gate in this makes so much sense.
And the Nine Hells is so irrevocably corrupt.
Right.
What you can see here is that Baldur's Gate is one step away from being in hell.
And what I like about all these themes and everything in here too is that, you know, there's been, I'm sure you've heard the term of murder hobos.
Yes.
Right. And how sometimes the D&D party can resort into doing things that are morally not, you wouldn't think of heroes doing, but it's all to get gold or to get experience and to kill as many monsters as you can. And you know, there's no other things there. And there, you know, that term can be like, some players are like, I'm proud to be a murder hobo. And some are like, I'm not sure this is the fantasy that you wanted. And I like that this book really just puts that, up front and up
it does,
center.
but you don't have to be a murder hobo.
Right.
You can err on the side of caution and still succeed and navigate the challenges of Baldur's Gate and accomplish your goals without going around and killing everybody. But if that's the way you want to go, Baldur's Gate is probably the one place you can get away with it.
And I think that this is one of those. There's something about this adventure that feels like that. It was an old. I might have been a Disney cartoon where it was Goofy as a father being like, "What, you wanna have candy? Here, have as much candy as you want." and all of a sudden, they're almost force feeding the kid as much candy, and you're like, "Well, wait a second, that's not what I want. I don't want to be sickened by all of this." Sugar or all these evil murder hobo-y type deals that we're doing, and then so it's putting it in its bald face when you're like, all right, well, all the things that you do as adventurers in all of our stories that we've reached out to, like, is that really how you want to act? And this shows it.
And the trick is, I think, in an adventure is to also show the characters that even in a place like Baldur's Gate, there are glimpses of light, individuals that you can run across that don't feel like they almost belong there in a way, but they remind you that there is goodness in the world and that you can go that way.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an important thing in this for DMs.
And also that it's to have it feel refreshing, like to get that stark, like, oh, that person feels refreshing. And why are they refreshing? Oh, because they're not a jerk. They're not trying to manipulate me. They're operating on a different frequency. So it's like those things to slap people awake, or like I was always thinking of like the end of Lord of the Rings where Frodo finally he's like, I forgot the taste of strawberries. Like it just sucks. Like, and he finally gets out of Mordor. He does it, and then they're all fresh back at Rivendell, and they're just happy. And it's like that feeling of like, oh, now I really value like the material plane. I really value peace. I really value
simple pleasures.
Yeah, just people being honest. I really value this stuff, and it's like that, like. Bang, to hit people. And so that feeling is something that I think we really wanted to strike home in this adventure. Like you not only do you get to experience, the terribleness, but you also really value the purity and of goodness and
points of light that
how
you do find
relaxing that feels and just how nice that feels. It's like, oh, I value that. Now I'm willing to fight for it,
So as people are, preparing to run this adventure, I think Dungeon Masters will be challenged by a couple of things that you guys mentioned, was the pacing as well as not making it feel like it's just bleakness all the time, right? So you've already described a few tools that are there in the book to make that happen, but maybe we could talk a little bit about how and when you could use those in a session, and how to take cues from your players in that way with this adventure.
Well, I mean, one of the things you could do is, there is no set way to run a devil. You can make them silly. You can make them kind of Disney devils where they're like, So you don't necessarily have to go with the hard theme of this. Like you could run it where it's kind of funny through the whole thing, and it kind of, if your players, you feel that your players just that's not their jam. So you can adjust this for your players, but you can turn it up and run devils being really Machiavellian, and so it really just depends on your player group.
Yeah. I mean, I think levity is going to be a huge part of this, so that it just doesn't
Yes, I think some of it will come out in just naturally based on some of the choices of stuff that we put in the adventure. Like, I'm not giving too much away here, but some of the villains in Baldur's Gate, there's a family of them, and they're just terrible. But they've got the family cat is a hoot.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's a real character, this family cat. And this cat does not like being in the family. So it's kind of it's like the rebellious family element in the story.
Interesting.
And you can befriend this cat and it can help you. And that's just a strange idea, right? It's sort of a funny, quirky thing when you finally meet this feline character.
Mm-hmm. Not a tabaxi, but
not
an actual cat.
Yeah, it's the family house cat. And it breaks. It's so unexpected in a way that I think it's one of the many kind of breaks that Adam was talking about. Those little slaps in the face of surprise. It's not as bad as you thought, or this story isn't going the way you think it might.
Yeah.
And I think there's enough of those seeded throughout Baldur's Gate and through Avernus that you will never be. I don't think the players will be oppressed for too long.
Right. Yeah. I think that's really important because you just don't want to necessarily. It's with any piece of creative storytelling.
I'm not saying we did it regularly, but it's like, okay, every 4 pages of this book, we need to put something in there.
There's got to be a joke in there somewhere.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why one of the NPCs that MT Black created is a wizard who polymorphed himself into an otter. Or was polymorphed into an otter and decided he liked being an otter more than he liked being a human.
Oh, man. That
So
sounds like my type of person.
Exactly. And so you get to meet this otter archmage at a point in the adventure. And it's a beautiful break, right? And it's a quirky, fun character. It's like, okay. Now we're 4 pages deeper into this book. We need another something like that, right? Like,
you didn't think about it that programmatic, but you did.
I can't promise you every 4 pages you're going to find a fun, quirky character. But throughout the book, these elements exist.
Yeah.
And there's enough of things in here where they there's like NPCs all scattered about, and these NPCs can show up in unlikely times. So a DM can use them. Like there's Mad Maggie's gang, there's Chukka and Clonk. There are these two Kenku, brothers that are goofballs, and they can show up and create that moment of what breaks it. There's the otter wizard that
There's Smiler.
There's Smiler, yeah.
Smiler, the Defiler.
Yes.
He can go either way.
Yeah. In more ways than one.
In more ways, he is all over.
In more ways than one. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to go into depth in that, and Lori should know soon more on the gangs that you can potentially meet. I love the idea of there being folks who live on Avernus that are not
Demons or devils.
Demons or devils who have any compunction. They're just interesting characters that
Yeah.
live there, and I think that's really fascinating. And we'll delve into that into more segments. But you mentioned MT Black, and we mentioned how Jim Zub had input on this. What were some of the other RPG writers out there that worked on this product?
James Introcaso, Lisa Chen,
Lisa Penrose.
Lisa Penrose. That's right. Yeah. Who else worked on that?
A lot of people worked on this.
A lot of people, I know.
Yeah.
Adam got everybody.
Chris Lindsay.
I love that Chris Lindsay worked on the Wandering Emporium.
Kate Welch, of course, Ari Levitch in-house.
Sure.
Richard Witter, Sean Wood. We had Joe Manganiello came in from a character.
What was that like?
It's great. Yeah. I think it was actually when we first started to come up with the idea of like, oh, this could be in the Nine Hells and all that. And Chris is like, maybe you give Joe a call. And so I was like, okay.
Well, it was like when we picked Avernus, or when you guys picked Avernus, one of the things about Avernus is Tiamat lives there. And once you start talking about Tiamat, you start talking about, Joe's character, Archon the Cruel, is a champion of Tiamat. Maybe
there's a love connection.
Maybe there's a connection there.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something there.
Yeah. And then I sent an email off to Joe, and he was totally down with it. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I know when we were working on what character Joe would play during D&D Live Descent to Avernus, I thought I was just throwing out some crazy ideas, like I do sometimes with you guys as we're dealing with programming like that. And he wrote an entire screed of like, oh, by the way, this is actually what's happening with the tower of Tiamat and all that. What that means.
There's a lot happening down there.
Yeah.
Archon's on a mission, and you in this adventure, you sort of if you cross paths with him, he's doing his own thing. You're doing your own thing. Mm-hmm. The question is there a way for those two things to come into alignment?
Yeah.
Because Archon's not a especially nice guy, but he can be helpful.
Right.
If you do the right things.
Yeah, he's like an agent that has his own agenda, but sometimes that agenda might align with the player characters.
Yeah, yeah.
But you might not trust him.
Maybe
in
not.
In practice, you probably shouldn't.
Yeah, no. But he's got Tiamat's ear, so
right.
And Tiamat's not happy about being in hell.
Yes.
You're not happy about being in hell. Maybe you can be unhappy in hell together.
Right. I mean, you said she lives there. Like she's got like a summer home there. I'm like, no, I don't think it's live so much as imprisoned there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
she's there against her will. So if they can do anything to get it out, what were some of the other writers?
Yeah, I'm looking.
So I think James Hake did some stuff with this.
Yes, he did.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
As well as Hannah Rose.
Yep.
Yes.
Hannah Rose, Amber Scott, James Sutter. Yeah.
Will Doyle and Sean Merwin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They did. They did stuff for even the Adventurers League at the live stream. Yeah.
That's right.
And that was some good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the D&D epic that we had there.
Yeah.
Figures in prominently with this. And of course, there's all of the amazing Adventurers League writers who are creating the new season that will delve into all of these themes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a blasted city in Avernus that you can stomp around in. A lot of the stuff having to do with that was written by Sean Merwin, and Will did a lot of the heavy lifting in the Avernus parts of the adventure, where you're just wandering around the plane and discovering strange, weird locations.
Yeah. And then we had Justin Doney and Dan Dillon and Bill Benham.
Yeah.
So everybody.
That's right. Thousands.
Yep, everybody pitched in. It was good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And obviously we had tons of artists, great covers with Hydro 74 and Tyler Jacobson.
And the artwork, and I mean, I'm seeing a lot of it for the first time now, flipping through the actual physical book, but it does bring to life so much of what we've been talking about and describing.
And then we had the cool section in the back where you get to actually see some of the concept art that was done by Alexi Briclot and Sean Wood and Richard.
That's something we hadn't done since Princess of the Apocalypse, and fans really liked it. Here's just a section at the end of the book of some of the art that laid the groundwork for the story.
Yeah. And we were talking about this earlier about how artwork and storytelling are not very separate in their disciplines, right?
Yeah.
Like they can inform each other and bring to life things.
Yeah. I mean, when we had Max Dunbar's stuff, and then Darkin, who when we saw Darkin's Blood War piece, it was just like, to actually see what it looks like. There's something about writing about it or kind of conceptualize it in your head, and then to actually see it, it's just...
Oh, absolutely.
Man.
That's
It's just so over the top.
Yeah.
All right, we don't have it right there. Sometimes we have it out in front, but that is one of my favorite pieces. We ended up making that cloth piece that we give away at D&D Live of that entire Blood War image of those two forces coming together with explosions. It definitely...
The other thing I like about the art at the back, too, is there's some stuff in there that didn't actually make it into the story, but it's just cool.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things in the story. The book's sort of got everything in the kitchen sink, but I like the piece with the ghost cat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ghost cat. So
Ghost
good.
cat.
There's a
Yeah,
ghost
people
cat.
can use it or not.
There's a scene one of the artists did of Baldur's Gate that just shows a sort of a dark alleyway or section of the city, and there's just like a little spectral ghost cat. So.
I think that's Vince
And you're like,
Gross.
what does that mean?
Yeah.
I know, right? Use it or not.
Yeah.
How much do you guys create in an adventure like this that ends up on the cutting room floor that doesn't get used?
Text or art?
Yeah, both. I mean, you guys deal with text more, so yeah.
Yeah, so on the text front, as much as twice the material can end up on the cutting room floor.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
And that's from the way you create? You just create more than you need to, and then you pick and choose the best things, or what?
It can be in any number of things. It could be that we essentially overcommission and take the best. Sometimes it's like we get off on a direction, but it isn't quite working, so we have to reinvent or change things around. Sometimes we just overestimate how much we actually need to fit the space that we have.
So it's kind of, it's similar to a shooting a film or something like that, where
Right.
you might get more footage than you need, or
Yeah.
in the cutting of it you realize, oh, we need to get a pickup and
Yeah.
get some more about this.
Or
because that's really
sometimes it's
important.
like, okay, we underestimated how much we needed to write about Baldur's Gate to give DMs and players a real sense of what's there. So we have to make that section bigger, so another section has to shrink. So what are we going to cut out of this other section, to put the emphasis where it needs to be? Yeah.
Right. Oh,
Things like that.
that's fascinating.
100 million decisions, actually. I'm hardly estimating. It's thousands of decisions about what to keep and what to stay, and it goes right down to the word.
Yeah. And I equate it in my head to a movie or a TV series or
Yeah.
something like that, where like there's so many collaborative people who are working on it, but there is
And when you're
hard
if
decisions
you
that
think of
have
it
to be
like a
made.
film editor is like snipping half seconds at a time, right? Just getting it down to the right pace, the right pacing, the right beats.
Yeah.
Marrying it to the music. There's a lot to think about.
And there's and it's even more difficult, or at least harder for me to conceive of, when you're just basically giving the prompts for the dungeon master, right? Like it's not, there is going to be more that's going to be expanded upon by each player and or dungeon master that interacts with this story.
Yeah.
So you want to give the best or the most stuff that is in line with the themes that you want to have for this adventure.
And then there are things like user experience stuff. Like we wanted to put in some flowcharts to help the DM very quickly at a glance see the flow of the adventure. Well, if you're going to throw those in, something's got to come out.
Right, because that's a full page thing you're talking about.
Or a half page or whatever. Well, however big the flowchart is or the flowcharts are, it eats up a fair amount of space, but it's space worth eating up.
Yeah.
So we sacrifice some other stuff.
And that was something we got feedback from from players and dungeon masters,
Yeah.
right, to start to include in our large adventures.
And sometimes a section is great, but it just runs it's a little bit too much attention on one thing. Like I think the Wandering Emporium, as when it came in written, was twice as long as what we actually put in the book. But we kept enough of it that you get a sense of its scope and feel.
Yeah.
We just trimmed out the stuff that was the least interesting of that material.
What I might be overstepping my bounds here, but what about the idea of putting together like an extended edition of an adventure like this?
Nope.
Whoops. All right, I'll tell Nathan and he'll say yes.
Okay.
Because I love content, and
Sure.
I think that I think my favorite editions of the Peter Jackson's movies, Lord of the Rings movies, were the extended edition. I don't really even watch
Sure.
the theatrical releases
Yeah.
because I think.
But I
you
think
get
in those
more-
experiences, you sort of revel in the world, right?
Yes.
And you're getting just more character moments. In a story like this, and here's an argument for the converse.
Yeah.
There's only so long that the players will want to be in hell. If you keep them there too long, the campaign might sour.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So you don't want to give people the wrong tools.
Right.
Or not
Yeah.
the wrong tools, but like the tools that you don't think will have a good player experience.
Yeah, the story is meant to play out a certain time frame and for a certain distance, and then you get out and everybody's happy.
Yeah.
If you belabor something, or if you just present more rooms in the dungeon, that doesn't necessarily create a better experience at the table.
I see.
Your campaign might end
Right.
unexpectedly when the players get bored of the location that they're in or whatever. So you shorten things down, you pare things down, so that everything keeps moving.
And like to Chris's point, it's like I got to see sort of on the front lines how that's done, and handing this over to Chris and just being like,
Make a book!
Make a book. Watch them.
Here's the awesome ideas and all the
to-
content,
But to see everything that Chris has just been talking about, it's like the years of experience, decades of experience that have gone into knowing what to cut, what to keep, what needs to be put in, what needs to be thrown out. It's like that is, I got to watch that and to see what an art form that is, and the decisions. Like every decision is informed by years and years and years of experience. So it's like, so I can hear what you're saying and know that's true. It's like I'm the same way. I love the Lord of Extended. Like show me all this stuff. Show me all the scenes with Aragorn and with the hobbits and all that. But with this, there is a story that's taking place, and to tell that story so that you leave this thing wanting more, rather than I just want to get out of this.
Over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You don't want that experience, and that's where Chris comes in and knows that so
Snip,
well.
Snip,
So,
snip,
yeah.
snip. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and and now I'm swaying the other way too, because I think there is such a wonderful DIY nature around this hobby, and when you've seen, the explosion of ancillary content that comes from just dungeon masters at their home table,
Yeah.
if they want more, they can just create more and go off of what you guys are feeding them that's in the book and create whatever kind of content they want. And that is essentially their extended edition. But then we also see that on Dungeon Masters Guild, where so many of some of the writers you mentioned as helping to work on this book are writing products that, or maybe even taking material that didn't end up in the book and releasing it on the Dungeon Masters Guild. So that is in some ways become the extended edition that I'm talking about. All right, so good. You convinced me the other way.
And just to be clear, I love the extended editions of Lord of the Rings. I watch them every Christmas.
It's a great Christmas time pastime, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because those were when they were released,
Yeah.
right? So it feels like you're going back.
And I may be in the minority, I don't know, but I actually love the extended editions of the Hobbit films too.
I haven't seen those.
Yeah, they're much better than theatrical releases. I think.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Can I borrow those? Do you have them on physical?
I do.
Media?
Yes, you can absolutely borrow them.
Nice. I will do that.
And that's another thing. Like this book, somebody will play this, and they don't have to play every single thing in this book.
No.
And they most likely won't.
They most likely won't. So you've got replayability for one, but also it's like it's not designed that way. It's like it's designed. There's a path to go through, and it branches out, and then there's all these different little things you can do. So realistically, it's even more truncated than just what's contained in that book, the actual adventure. So
Yeah, and by no means am I discounting the amount of material that's in there,
Oh,
because
sure.
there is stuff in there that if people are playing a weekly session, it will take a year or more to get through this entire story.
It'll be as long or as short as the DM wants it to go. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, if I wasn't excited already, this conversation has got me more and more jazzed to Dungeon Master and/or play in a campaign set in Baldur's Gate: Descent into Avernus.
I suspect there will be some groups that will go through the Baldur's Gate section, run off to Candlekeep, and just stay in Candlekeep.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. For real.
Be like, oh, we have to go to hell.
But Candlekeep is just so cool.
Yeah, books.
Yeah. If I had to pick a location that I wanted to live in the Forgotten Realms, I think Candlekeep would be top.
That
of
would
the
be
list.
all right.
So
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. I love books so much, so I would. It's part of my thing.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we got to talk about Candlekeep in our Lore You Should Know segment that we got to record next. So thank you guys. Thank you for being here and delving into everything that's going on with this adventure. How can people get in touch with you to pester you with amazing questions about how to expand their adventure?
I am on Twitter at Chris Perkins DND.
I'm on Twitter at Adam of Adventure.
We're plugging your handle a lot on this episode. So hopefully you get some followers and people will jump in and find out more about what's happening in this adventure. So thank you guys. And we'll be ending this segment right about now. Boom. Excellent. All right, cool. Thank you, Twitch listeners and or viewers. We are going to take a short break and come back where Adam and I will delve into a couple of lore topics that we only touched on briefly in that interview. So we'll get into Candlekeep, as I said, and also all of the many creatures you can find in Avernus, including what those infernal hell machines are all about.
Sweet.
All right, awesome. Well, we're going to take a short break.